welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. It is Thursday, January 30th, 2020. And tonight's topic is, does money matter? Now, I don't mean does money matter in the sense, does money make you happy? Can money buy you love? What's most important in life, whether it's money or something else? I want to talk about money as it relates to value. Now, in the gold and silver community, there's always this insistence that gold is money, period, or silver is money. In fact, I had a debate with David Morgan as to whether silver was money, and I think it misses the point. Whether something is money or not, for most people, is not a matter of academic concern, but they're really concerned about it. What impact does something have if it's money on its value? Because most people who are invested in gold and silver, they believe it has value. And they believe that its value derives from the fact that it is money. They often cite or misquote the J.P. Morgan quote that money, gold is money and everything else is credit. Actually, what he said was gold is money and nothing else. But again, it really misses the point. Gold and silver have value. And as we've talked about in the concept of the gold-silver ratio, silver is valued more as a commodity than anything else, as 70% of its demand is based on the demand that it has mostly for solar panels and electronics, and that demand has not been growing the last 10 years. So it's understandable that the price of silver has not been rising. Now, gold, on the other hand, has about 40 to 50% of its demand simply for investment. Because despite the gold standard ending, and despite there being a demonetization of gold as a everyday currency, central banks and others view gold, perhaps you can say, as money. For whatever reason, they continue to view gold as a valuable asset, money or otherwise. Now, I would argue it's not money in the sense that because it doesn't function as a medium of exchange, that technically it's not money. But again, it's academic. It doesn't really matter whether gold or silver meet the definition of money. The question is, if they do, so what? What value does it add to the fact that they are either money or not money? And I would argue pretty much nothing. What matters is the demand for both gold and silver. And again, they both have very different demand profiles. Gold, right now, still has this monetary demand. Let's go back to the value that gold or money or silver or money had 100 years ago. The demand for silver 100 years ago was largely to print money for coins. That was the big demand for silver. Similarly, for gold, the big demand for gold was to operate as money. But the curious thing about the period of time, the last 100, 150 years for gold and silver, where the prices of gold and silver were held in check. Now, people today say, well, gold and silver haven't been rising because of manipulation. Well, if you think about it, they're manipulated now. When they were officially money, recognized as currencies, legal tender by governments, the prices were even more manipulated. In fact, they were stabilized. One of the things about money, in order for it to be relied upon as a medium of exchange, it can't fluctuate wildly. So for that reason, or one of the reasons, the price of gold was fixed at $35 an ounce by an act of Congress. They revalued up from $20.67, where it had been for decades, fixed. And it lasted at that price through manipulation from 1934 all the way through the early 1970s. Now, if you think about that, if you're a big fan that gold is money and therefore it has value, well, actually, it had no value really other than the value that the government ascribed to it as an official legal tender, as money that ran the world's global economic system, where an ounce of gold under the Bretton Woods agreements of 1944 was redeemable by foreign central banks, or was a dollar was redeemable by foreign central banks for an ounce of gold at $35 an ounce, fixed price. So when you're in that scenario, you may want to hold gold, but it doesn't protect you, so to speak, against anything the government does. In fact, even if you believe that, from 1934 to 1974, American citizens weren't even allowed to hold gold. The same thing happened with silver. Now, you were allowed to hold silver from 1934 to 1974, and you can still hold silver, and now you can hold gold. A quarter, a dime, a half dollar have had the same amount of silver in them from 1933 to 1964. And yet, a quarter was always worth 25 cents, a dime always worth 10 cents, and a half dollar worth 50 cents. And that meant that the price of silver, or the silver value content within those coins, was relatively stable during that time period. And because silver was used mostly for coins, and back when gold was made with, when they made coins out of gold, the values were relatively stable because there was essentially no monetary inflation on the face value of those coins. The reason gold and silver are valuable today is not because they are money, it's because they are no longer part of a financial system that ties their value to currencies, i.e. quarters, dimes, half dollars, and other units of account. Right now, they're outside of the monetary system, even though gold is more in the monetary system, because a curious thing happened in 1971 when Nixon refused to honor the Bretton Woods agreements and told the world that central banks that held dollars could no longer temporarily redeem their dollars at the U.S. Treasury for an ounce of gold for $35. When that happened, many commentators thought, and many government officials hoped, that that would reduce the value of gold because it would no longer have a monetary value, and therefore the gold that was in usage, or the gold that had been mined or already existed, would merely go to fulfill the demand for trinkets and jewelry. One of the reasons they claim they took the silver out of the coins was not because they were worried that people were hoarding it. They were concerned that there was a growing industrial need for silver. And John Kennedy even said silver serves no monetary purpose other than to make coins. He thought, well, we have gold. And the reason they took silver out of the coins was they said, well, Kennedy may be right that it has no monetary purpose other than to make coins, but why waste it on coins? We can use copper and nickel in order to mint coins, and that's exactly what they did. So the reason that silver was removed from the monetary system was officially stated because silver was needed as an industrial metal. Gold was removed from the monetary system because the United States was running out of gold and there wasn't enough gold to meet the demands of the European central banks that were looking to redeem it. And indeed, one could argue, well, there was enough gold, it's just that it wasn't priced high enough because the United States refused to allow the price of gold to rise from $35 because that would have meant a devaluation of the dollar, and they didn't want to do that. Now, it all happened anyway. So what's happening today is gold and silver, if you insist they are money, you can make that argument. I would argue it's not. But it doesn't really matter, because what is driving the value of gold and silver today has nothing really to do with whether they're money or not. It has to do with what is their demand. If you look at assets that have risen in value, if all that, they're not money. Apple shares have exploded in value. Tesla shares, Apple shares, Amazon shares, Netflix shares, they're not money, and yet they have tremendous value. Where is their money derived from? Well, it's not derived from them being money. Palladium has risen at a faster pace than gold or silver, and it's not money. Where is its value derived from? Well, the answer is simple. Palladium is a commodity demand, and shares are a value, or are valued on the basis of what they produce in terms of revenue and income. Now, we can argue that a company like Tesla has no income, and it's really just based on whatever pie in the sky that Elon Musk is able to convince investors that's going to happen if you invest in Tesla shares. However, they're all based relative to the monetary system. The reason that shares are rising, the reason that assets are rising, is simply because of government and monetary policy, which has made the value of today's money, the dollar, and other fiat currencies less vis-a-vis other assets. Why? Because they have purposely stated that currencies or economies should have inflation built into them, because they think that inflation itself can create growth, and then growth can create jobs. Now, remember what the Fed's dual mandate is. They're supposed to have a stable price for the dollar and full employment. Well, stable price to them means obviously it can't fluctuate wildly, so they let it devalue just a little bit. 2% inflation is what they have a target of how much they can devalue the dollar each year. Well, if you have that, then assets that are fixed in value, meaning are fixed in supply, like gold and silver, should appreciate versus another asset, dollar bills, that are designed to lose value. And they have. Over time, gold and silver have outperformed the dollar since 1964, since 1968, whatever year you want to use. But other assets have well outperformed both of them. So despite being what some people want to argue is money, that doesn't provide them with any additional value. And in fact, because there's no demand for silver to mint coins, actually that means there's less demand for silver. And unlike gold, where there's actual physical demand from central banks and large investors, where there's not as much for silver. That's why gold has retained I don't want to say, you could call it monetary demand, but it's more of an investment demand. And it's an investment demand that's not investment demand like someone who invests in Palladium or someone who invests in Apple shares. Those are investment demands based on the idea that Palladium's a commodity and you invest in it because you think it'll run out and there won't be enough Palladium. Or you invest in Apple because you think that Apple will outperform its peers and will grow revenues. And people invest in gold with no expectation that it's going to do anything other than hold its value. Now that makes it valuable in and of itself, that there's a perception that gold is valuable. But the idea that something is money, and the reason central banks hold it, also is a stabilizing factor in the price of gold. Central banks don't want to have assets that fluctuate wildly. In fact, the reason they hold gold is to give it an anchor against the loss of value from the fiat currencies that are in the global financial system. So if you think about money, money's not supposed to skyrocket. If the price of money skyrockets, that means that the money is not stable. So a lot of people, they try to say Bitcoin is money, and it's not. And Bitcoin is not money either. It's too unstable to act as a medium of exchange. Now, people get offended when you say that gold and silver and Bitcoin aren't money. It's as if you're saying they have no value. What I think that people that get offended by that are missing a very, very important point, that money in itself is not supposed to have skyrocketing values. Just labeling something money doesn't mean, well, now it's worth a lot more because it's money. Because what gave silver demand 100 years ago was a lot of it was needed to print coins. However, those coins couldn't fluctuate in value. As I mentioned, the quarter, the dime, the half dollar never changed in their value. Even though there was a lot of demand for the silver, which you would have thought would have made the price of silver rise. It didn't. They try to, when governments are going to issue a currency, they had to manipulate the price of silver, and they actually had to fix the price of gold in order to make it what you would call money, so that it would be stable and not fluctuate. So you should be thankful that gold and silver are no longer money, and that they are simply assets that will fluctuate based on what's going on in the monetary system and based on their supply and demand dynamic. Even with manipulation today in gold and silver and in every other market, it's nowhere near as blatant as it was when they had to, almost by definition, keep the price of gold and silver stable so that the coins that were made of gold and silver would not fluctuate wildly. Now, that was quite a hard trick, because when they discovered gold in 1849 in San Francisco, actually 1848, the mass of people didn't get out there until the following year. But when all that gold started to come home, that created inflation. We saw the same issue when the Spanish and the Portuguese discovered massive amounts of silver in Bolivia and Central America and started shipping that stuff back to Spain. That also created massive inflation. So what central banks think today is they can control all of this. They can control the money supply, and it's not based on how much gold or silver come out of the ground and what the fines are. Central banks can always find money. They can always print it. And that's why they view, and that's why we'll probably never return to a gold standard, certainly not a silver standard. Gold appears to have solidified itself as an anchor, as a hedge, or as insurance against central bank profligacy. Silver has not. Silver has, and people get offended by that too. That somehow I'm saying silver has no value because it is not viewed as money. And they say, of course it is. It's been money since the Roman denarius, and you could get a day's pay in silver. None of that's relevant today. That doesn't mean silver isn't valuable. The point is, no one uses silver as a medium of exchange, and no one uses gold as a medium of exchange. Doesn't mean that they can't, but they don't. And also with cryptocurrencies, literally, not literally, but almost literally, no one uses Bitcoin or Litecoin or any of those other currencies as a medium of exchange. If they're going to be used, if you're going to use cryptocurrencies, most likely they're going to be stable coins. Now, that doesn't mean that Bitcoin and Litecoin aren't valuable if they're not used. In fact, they're more valuable if they're not used as a medium of exchange, one could argue, because when you use gold, silver, Bitcoin, Litecoin as a medium of exchange, you are essentially selling it. Well, selling something generally means the price goes down. So let's see what you people think about all this. But I'm not tired of the argument of making that gold and silver aren't money. People say, hey, Lewis is crazy. He thinks gold isn't money. He thinks silver isn't money. It's almost as I'm saying it's not valuable. It's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that something being money by definition can't be too valuable, because if it goes up in price, that destroys the concept of it being a stable medium of exchange. All right, let's see what we have here in the comments section. All right. Where's Barry? Really starting to hate silver. I don't know what that means. All right. De La Ville. So all the people wishing we would go back to a gold standard will be looking at a government fixed price as history has demonstrated. Is that a fair statement, Lewis? That is correct. People, all these people who say, everything will be solved if we go back to a gold standard. Okay, but you won't get rich from your gold then. They will fix the price of gold, and then that's it. And you'll have no way. Then what would you, quote, buy to protect yourself? Well, we wouldn't need to protect ourselves because we'd have a gold standard. Yeah, and we've seen under a gold standard, governments cheat. There's no way of verifying the gold standard. There's no way of making sure that they're going to adhere to it. And if they don't allow you to own gold under a gold standard, how are you better off? I don't think they've thought that through. It's almost like the gold pumpers have convinced them gold is money and everything was better when we had a gold standard. Yeah, but there weren't gold bugs back then. Then people weren't investing in gold. They weren't allowed to from 1933 on. And before that, if everyone had gold, then there was no reason to hoard it. Nick says gold is valuable because it is rare. It can't be printed out of thin air. Yes, that's true, and that's true of other commodities as well. The thing about gold is it has a special allure. It's not just rare, because we've seen if it's just rarity that you're concerned about, platinum is far rarer than gold, and gold is almost twice as expensive. Why? And platinum actually has a greater industrial use than gold does. There's some essential things for platinum. There's some essential gold uses too, but the point being is, if people are going to hoard something, it's far more likely to be gold than platinum, even though platinum is rarer. Nick says, people are confused because these commodities are valued in fiat currency terms. It's the fiat currency that is volatile. That is correct. And it's volatile on purpose. Well, I guess it's how you look at it's the yin-yang look at it. Is it gold that's going up or the dollar that's going down, or is it a dollar that's going up and gold going down? And De La Ville says, silver's been a big loser for me, and my gold had done much better. Now, that's all understandable now in retrospect, but actually it should have been understandable even 10 years ago. Because we've seen, since this is what my research has come up with. Since 1974, this whole idea of there's this gold-silver ratio and there's this standard, and it's based on relative rarity, and it's 16 to 1 because of Isaac Newton, and there's 9 to 1 how much it comes out of the ground. None of that is relevant because we've seen relative rarity doesn't determine price. In fact, those ratios were set by government in order to have a bimetallic standard, meaning we had gold and silver both in the United States side by side functioning as currency. We could not have that big arbitrage going on between gold and silver. So they fixed the ratio at 15 to 1. That's not a historic ratio that we must return to. So what I like to look at is since and things were different because from 1933 onwards, there were no gold coins that had to be fixed relative to silver. So from 1933 on, Congress, or 1934, through the Gold Act of 1934, set the price of gold at $35 an ounce. Okay, but silver wasn't fixed price in 1934. The price wasn't fixed in 1934. And therefore, if gold stayed at $35 an ounce from 1934 to 1974, whatever the ratio was during that period is irrelevant because gold wasn't allowed to move and silver was. Although silver was somewhat kept in check because they had to keep it in check for purposes of making sure that the dime, quarter, and half dollar, the values of those remained worth a dime, 10 cents, 25 cents, and 50 cents. But since 1974, when the price of gold was allowed to rise, since 1974, you also had a period where silver had been totally removed also from the monetary system there was no more demand for it to make coins because they stopped making 1964 90% silver coins in early 1965, and they stopped holding on to silver to redeem silver certificates in 1968. So by 1971, 74, after Nixon took the U.S. off the gold standard, after the price of gold was allowed to rise, that's when you had silver and gold trading on an apples-to-apples basis, meaning they were both allowed to trade, both not as part of a government, let's say scheme, but a government scheme to have them in the monetary system. However, since 1974, gold has had an advantage because it's remained in the monetary system. Central banks hold it as reserves, even though no country issues gold coins, but no country issues silver coins. So therefore, the demand for silver since 1974 has been part investment, monetary, and the rest commodity, and then for some jewelry as well. For gold, the demand remained investment through investment banks, central banks or investment banks, individual investors, and jewelry. The difference is that far more percentages of the available gold mined each year and the gold stocks was actually held for investment, central banks, or jewelry, whereas a lot of silver was used as commodity. So they were both valued differently. And we saw the two spikes of silver coincided with tail ends of massive bull runs for gold. Gold from 1974 to 1980 made a big run from $35 an ounce to $800. Silver caught up in 1979 and rose from about $8 to $50. Same thing happened again in the 2000s. Gold had a massive bull run from 2000 to 2008. Went from about $300 an ounce to $800 an ounce. And then it took off again when the financial crisis hit. And finally, silver caught on. Silver caught on and went from like $12 to $50 from 2009 to 2011. And it's the same concept. Gold, in the last two times, gold performed well from 1974 to the current day pretty much, other than two big spikes. It's been relatively on an upswing, whereas silver only did two spikes and dives and then was basically trading as a commodity in between the two spikes and dives. The 1979-80 spike and dive and the 2011-2013 spike and dive. Gold has not done that, and that's because gold is, I don't want to say money, but gold is a more stable investment commodity than silver is. Silver is more of a usable throwaway commodity. And some people think because they throw it away that makes it rare. No, it means that it's not valued as much, that people are not going to try to retrieve it. Where's Barry? I'm mostly EV, but it's tying up money that could be made in crypto. Now, crypto, there's really, you want to make the argument that it's money, that's a fool's errand. However, you can make an argument, and it's, again, based on historical analysis of crypto, they have skyrocketed, but not because they're money, because they're a speculative asset. And because they're small markets, and because people don't know how to value them, and because some people want them, and more people want them than don't want them, and manipulation, they can rise. They can rise a lot faster and have risen a lot faster than gold or silver. Nick Rodriguez. The gold standard was not a free market phenomenon. That is absolutely true. That was government manipulation of the highest order. In the country's early history, the Spanish dollar was used as a currency. That is correct. The Spanish pieces of 8, in fact, was legal tender to, I think, 1856, 1858 in the United States. And the reason for that was those Spanish milled dollars, the Spanish dollars, the pieces of 8, were a very good unit of account, medium of exchange, and people trusted the purity of the Spanish dollar. Money is a free market phenomenon, says Nick. Tribune, plebes. Gold is mined slowly. Only 1% or so is added to the global stockpiles each year. It's actually more than that, but it's still single digits, but you're correct. That controls the money supplies quite well, and we're unlikely to find any El Dorado anytime soon. Now, if you look at, let me see if I can find you this, if I can find this very quickly. This chart is going to, I don't want to say blow you away, but the amount of gold that has been mined in recent years is phenomenal. And let me see if I can find it. When you see this chart, I'm gonna try to find it. When you see this chart, it indicates how much gold has really been mined in recent years versus historically. It also shows that most of the gold in the world, like 80-90% of it, has been mined in the last 60-70 years. It is a tremendous amount of gold, and actually today we mine so much gold that let me see if I can find it, that it's more than 1% a year. And with mining techniques and mining elsewhere, and eventually they say they're going to mine, people think that it's pie in the sky, that you can mine. Don't think I'm able to find this this chart. Ah, there it is. Beautiful. Here it is. Okay, take a look at this chart here. This is annual global mining production from 1835. And I mentioned last time I covered this chart, there was a shipwreck, I think it was in like 1850s, and about 10% of the world's gold went down with it, because there really wasn't that much above ground gold at the time. Look at the chart to the far left, how much gold they had been mined. Look at that, like tripling, maybe even quadrupling of the gold mining that was happening as a result of the gold rush of 1848, 1849. But you're talking about 200 tons of gold a year. In today's modern world, even though it's far more labor intensive, you have to do it globally, the world mines 3,500 tons of gold now. And even look, since 2000, it's gone from about 2,400 to about 3,500. So it's not a stable, it's as far as nature goes and man's ability to extract resources, it is, as you say, where are you? Tribune of Plebes. It is a very, it's not a perfect monetary system, but you're right. The monetary supply doesn't grow very much. It's based on mining, but you are somewhat at the whim of sometimes governments like South Africa, when they were the world's leading gold mining country. You're at the whims of the ability to mine the gold, and you also are at the whims of discoveries. And we saw that, as I mentioned, with the big increases in gold finds. And apparently there's a big find of silver up in the disputed areas, North India and China, on the border there. Chrono Bear, I can all but guarantee nearly all people who declare gold is money have never used gold as a medium of exchange. That is correct. But this gold is money stuff is really, it's a marketing tool. There's actually a company called Gold Money. It's convenient to say gold is money, period. But what does it really mean? Because with most people, it's not a philosophical argument. It's more of an argument that people want to believe that gold is money, because of that, it has value that they see, no one else sees. Coins AZ is here. De La Villa, if I had your channel 10 years ago, I'd have done things completely different. I mean, in a good way. Well, there's always the concept of, what do they say, hindsight, the 2020 vision there. Yeah, Nick says, I assume that's more for silver, the amount mined over the past 60 years. We're not like 800 million ounces a year. And that's the other thing the silver pumpers try to tell you. We're running out of silver. There's no silver mining. I don't have any. That one I won't be able to find as quickly as I found this one, because I did this one just recently. But silver mining is just massive nowadays, even though there's not the same demand there was for coins, because there's so much demand for copper, zinc, tin, all the other base metals, that silver gets dragged into that too. Also, silver's mined as a byproduct of gold too. Where's Barry? If this virus gets really bad, do you see a scenario where crypto plummets? Well, I don't know why crypto would plummet any more than any other asset. You can argue more likely to plummet would be Starbucks, any international company with Chinese exposure. Sales from China, imports from China would fall. But the other thing is that I'm not really sure what's going on with this virus. I asked a question today on Twitter. I saw that 12,000 to 58,000 people have died every year in the United States alone from the flu. Now, you don't see the media attention on that. Now, so far, the deaths attributed to this virus are only in the hundreds, and that's in China. So I'm not sure. They did this with the SARS virus. What's different about this? I think the mortality rate is still in single digits. So I'm not sure why this is a big deal. And as I say a big deal, I mean a media big deal compared to the tens of thousands of people who die from the flu every year. I'm not trying to downplay it, but they have it down as a pandemic where percentages of the population are going to get wiped out. Now, I haven't heard that. This is not like Ebola, from what I understand. People get sick from this and they get better. And some people don't get better, but that's the same with the flu. So I'm not sure why this would impact the markets other than, when you do have quarantines, obviously you have a slowdown in economic growth. That's for sure, because products and things don't move. I don't see why it would be especially harmful to crypto. But then again, one of the things that people do, and we saw this at the financial crisis, the price of silver fell dramatically at the fight because people sell everything. Let's say you have stocks, and you have stocks that are getting hit hard by this because the virus is out of control, and you have margin calls and everything. Well, then you sell whatever you have. You sell your winners, your losers, you sell everything. So that's one way, I guess, that crypto could fall if people have big crypto profits. Nick Rodriguez, that gold production chart makes it even more bullish on Bitcoin. Well, that gold production chart shows you that unlike Bitcoin, you can produce more Bitcoin. Now, a lot of people are, well, you can just make another crypto. No, you can't. You can, but it's not going to have the network. It's not going to have the miners. It's not going to have the full support. Atocha, the Spanish shipwreck. Nope, that's not the one I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of it was one off of the coast of, it left Panama and it crashed along the US coast. Maybe that is the one. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining me tonight. By the way, if you're interested in buying gold or silver, you could do so at the link there below, SD Bullion or Money Metals Exchange or Golden Eagle Coins, the Smaulgld affiliate links. I get a small commission if you do purchase through those links. So I want to thank everyone for joining me tonight. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel, BitChute, and YouTube, and also to Smaulgld.com. And if you like this presentation, you can also become a Smaulgld patron or Subscribe Star member. I got 4. I need another Subscribe Star member. Or you can donate via PayPal or sending items of value, checks, cash, silver to Smaulgld LLC, P.O. Box 714, Dover, New Hampshire 03821. Thanks, everyone, for joining me tonight, and we'll see you soon.